Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's Top Leaders. I am so excited to have you along, listening to what people are talking about out there when it comes to being a fabulous leader. There's so many pieces about that we want to help you to be successful. Therefore, I'm bringing you fabulous guests to help you grow and to develop and really become that tech leader that everyone wants to work for. And today we've got a wonderful guest with us. So let me tell you a bit about Heather Dumas, and we're jumping into a great conversation. Heather is a healthy lifestyle strategist, passionate about helping type A executive women who feel powerless and disconnected from their bodies reclaim their power by understanding their bodies and implementing simple lifestyle changes so that they can look and feel like the badasses they are. Ow! She has been featured on podcasts and stages worldwide and is the #1 best-selling author of 4 cookbooks and a keynote speaker. She offers a simple, easy to execute method for creating and sustaining a healthy lifestyle without sacrificing career success or relationships. Heather, thank you for joining me on today's
Absolutely.
Top Leaders.
My pleasure.
So good to have you here. Okay, so right out of the gate, we're going to do some rapid fire questions. So first of all, salty or sweet?
Salty.
Your favorite book today?
Oh, my favorite book today, it's still You're a Badass because it changed my life.
Okay, awesome. I love it. Okay, if you're going to go travel to one place right now, where do you want to go?
Switzerland.
Switzerland. Okay, nice. I love it. Okay, good.
I'm not a beach girl. I'm a mountain girl.
Mountain girl. Yes, you are. All right. So fitness, personal training, all of this world of helping people to feel better about their bodies. How did you even come to get into this in the first place?
Well, I was an athlete growing up. Still am an athlete. And then I started going to group fitness classes and really enjoyed that and fell in love with a couple different instructors. And then they stopped teaching. And I was like, what do I do? Because you get rather attached to your instructor. And so the group fitness director was like, well, why don't you teach? I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll teach. So started teaching group fitness. And then I ended up at a bunch of different gyms all at the same time. Those gyms started closing one by one, as is the industry standard. And so I had a bunch of followers who had attached themselves to me, like I had to my instructors, and they were like, will you help us? Will you train us? And I was not at that time a personal trainer. So decided why not? Got certified and became a coach, and it's really evolved since then to be well beyond personal training.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you so much. I think it's kind of fun to hear about people's backstories, because it's not like all of a sudden you just woke up one day like, oh, I guess I'll just do this. Right. So yeah, that's so powerful indeed. So trends in lifestyle leaders. I really want to delve into this because I'm over here coaching leaders all the time. We're talking about stuff to help them with their teams and workplace engagement, whatnot. But there's a lot of stuff. And I really want to get your take on what are the trends that you're seeing that are really hard for leaders? What's not so much the workplace stuff, right? But the things around like, what's going on with their bodies, their mindset. Let's delve into that. What's first thing?
Well, I mean, the lowest hanging fruit is, coming out of a pandemic, right? And we all know that put everyone under a tremendous amount of stress. It highlighted our lack of immunity, but I don't, in my opinion, think that it did a job well enough so that we kind of changed our ways. We actually went deeper into the ways that, didn't allow us to fight off disease. And so now we always had like a lack of barriers because we have cell phone and computer and internet and texting and all of that. And so there became no barrier when, mobile phones came into the world. But then with COVID and everyone then teleworking, then it seems like the barrier completely evaporated, and so now we don't have any boundaries, and everyone is expecting us to answer a call at 10 o'clock at night and, text and whatever and then your kids are in the background, and now it's just acceptable that your kid bursts in during a Zoom call because we are all used to that, right? But
yes,
the lack of boundaries can exacerbate our stress. It can cause us to feel a lack of control over our lives. Ever since we were little kids, we like boundaries. So yeah, I think the biggest problem right now is the lack of boundaries, and then the undue stress we put on ourselves. Especially, I serve mostly type A women like myself. And so we already hold ourselves to a ridiculously high standard and put way too much pressure on ourselves. But then we feel like, oh, well, I have to be even better. I have to be the best mom and the best this and the best that. And there's no boundaries. And so I just have to do it all the time. I have to be everything to everybody 24/7.
Yeah. Oh, girl, totally, totally, for sure. So let's take a moment for the sake of the listeners. Let's talk about what you mean by boundaries.
Okay.
Let's just define that for a second. What does that mean to you?
Well, to me, it means my brain turns off of one mode and onto the other. Like, I really shift. And my husband and I actually joke, because when we get in what we call work mode, we tend to be a little bit more serious and direct, and sometimes a little shorter with our words. And if we're in work mode and communicating with one another, that's not the best way to communicate with your spouse, right?
Yeah, right.
You're like, why are you being so short with me right now? And if I'm like, oh, I'm in work mode, he gets it. He goes, oh, okay, you're focused on that right now, so you can't really have this side conversation. So I think for me, boundaries is in my head, being able to divide up between work mode and mom mode and wife mode and volunteer mode and be by myself mode, and it becomes very, very difficult to do that with the way our lives are run right now.
Thank you for that. That's great. Oh my goodness. I'm just going back and I'm thinking of how many of us were used to having that break where you get in your car and you drive to work.
Yeah. And you
right?
you either decompress on the way home or you ramp yourself up on the way there, right?
Yep, absolutely. And then it's like, oh, we don't have that physical boundary anymore, where it's as logical. I've literally grabbed my keys and my purse and I have walked out the door. Right. And so it's like,
well, the other thing is whether you're salary or not, for the sake of things, you're clocking out, right?
Right.
You leave the office and you've clocked out, and you have, like I said, in your brain decided, I'm done with work for the day.
Yeah.
Yes, maybe you might answer a text or a phone call or whatever, but now it feels like we don't ever clock out. It feels like you're just still working. And especially if you're, a business owner, or, you're kind of in that entrepreneurial mindset, if you run a team, things like that, where it can be a 24/7 in your head. You're thinking of the next project and the next thing, and, the list that never ends. So there's no clocking out.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. A lot of people in tech are dealing with issues with team members that are in multiple time zones. And so that was,
there you go. Yeah.
It's been going on long before the pandemic hit, right? So, I could think like a classic one would be a team based in the United States, and then they have a complementary team in India, right? Which is almost exactly opposite.
Yeah, exactly.
So depending on where exactly you're at in the US, you know what I mean? And also what, if it's daylight savings or not. Right. And so, but it's pretty much on the other side. And so,
and we used to honor those business hours. We used to know that if I emailed my colleague in the UK, and it's mid-afternoon, they're probably, with their family going to bed. I'm not going to hear from them until I'm asleep. Right. But now it feels like that response time is expected anytime, anywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's totally true. I've seen some executives even post on LinkedIn saying things like, can we all just not email our people? Like, stop emailing them, like, or even like in the evening or something's like, yeah, you have a great idea, but it's like, write up the email and save it as a draft.
Right.
And then email it to them in the morning, or some, whatever appropriate.
Well, we can all schedule things now, right? You can schedule emails to go out, and I schedule texts because I get up a lot earlier than most people. And that is when I do my deepest thinking. And so if I get an idea or I remember something, I'm like, oh, I need to tell so-and-so that, I will write the text and schedule it to go during normal people hours.
Right.
That way I'm not trying to remember to send it, because I know if I write it as a draft, I'll probably forget to send it. So I have to literally schedule it. It has to be off of, if I have written it, it needs to be off of my brain so that I don't forget about it. So yeah, but scheduling, and I'm a huge fan of automation. Huge. Whether it's with your meals, your family, your emails, your text messages. I mean, we think of automation and we think of business processes, but you can automate dinner. It's called an Instapot or a crock pot or an automatic oven, right? Yes. Get it ready at 8 o'clock in the morning or the night before, and you set it and it goes, and you come home and it's magically cooked and warm, right? Right. You know, you can automate your grocery delivery. You can set it to go and have it arrive like magic on your doorstep. So there are a lot of things that you can automate that just takes that one more thing out of your brain that allows you to clock out, so to speak.
So let's talk about, why aren't more people automating things like that? Like, what do you think is really holding people back from saying, oh yeah, let me just throw the things in the crock pot?
One is control, and two is fear of change, but they don't recognize it, right? They're not like afraid to use the crock pot, but in the back of their brain, your brain doesn't like change. Whether you're uncomfortable where you are or not, your brain does not like to change. So if you're used to coming home and throwing something together for dinner, and now you're going to shift and prep it the night before in the crock pot, your brain's like, oh, that feels like more work. Oh, we don't want to do that. That's not our normal routine. And you will naturally seek out reasons to not do it. The other thing is control. My husband in particular is like a freak about his produce. It has to be a very particular way. And I've had a lot of clients that are the same way. I'm like, get your groceries delivered, or at least have them pick them, like, or you can just go pick them up. I'm like, oh, well, I like my this way and that way. And that's where you have to make a decision what your time is worth. Is your time worth walking into the grocery store? Well, driving there, walking in, getting the thing, checking out, walking out. And that's only if you grab that one thing, which you probably will not just grab that one thing, and walk out to your car and drive home, right? That's minimum, 45 minutes, depending on, unless the store is like right next door. Is it worth 45 minutes to have that perfectly firm tomato? Or can you deal with maybe sometimes not getting the most perfect tomato, but you have that 45 minutes to do whatever you need to do?
Yeah.
You know, like, is it really that big of a deal?
Yes.
Your life to not have the perfectly, the right textured tomato, or can you just survive with whatever, and most of the grocery services that deliver, you can tell them, hey, I want green bananas, or I want whatever. And I've been doing that since well before COVID, because I was like, yes, please. Someone picks my own groceries. All I have to do is drive up and get it picked up and put in my car. Yes, please. And I've only had maybe 10-15% of the time where they pick something and I'm like, not the greatest choice, but that's worth millions of dollars to me. Literally. Yeah. Because it's so many hours of my time.
Right. Yeah. I love that. I love how you're painting this picture of like the 45 minutes saved. Hello, and it's like back to this whole type A personality. You've got working professionals who likely have a significant other, children in the household. It's like, can you not think of another way you could, use those 45 minutes, obviously all sorts of hashtag sarcasm here,
well, but how many times do people say, oh, I don't have time, or I would do this if I had more time, or I would do that. There's your time right there. Have someone else buy your groceries for you. Done.
Right. So good. For sure. And then, I think about like meal planning, it's like a couple of years ago, I read this really funny meme that said, nobody ever told me the hardest decisions I'd have to make as an adult is figuring out what to have for dinner every night.
I've seen that meme and I laughed out loud because it is the truth.
So true.
It's real sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And so like, why is that so hard? I mean, I was just recently at a bookstore picking up something and I happened to walk past the cookbook section. There's all these amazing cookbooks. I mean, Heather, you've written 4 cookbooks, exactly. Yeah. Like there's like so many amazing resources that are out there, but and I actually love flipping through cookbooks. I like to just own them. I think they're beautiful, you know what I mean? And especially if they have like history around like a
Sure.
geographic
Yeah.
area, you know,
Yeah.
something like that. Like I bought for at Christmas time last year, I bought for my husband a book on Palestinian food. And it was all this gorgeous pictures of that area. And just, I was like, wow, this is like, it was just visually very stimulating, right? Months later, still haven't used the cookbooks, you know what I mean? But it sure looked good, you know. But anyhow, but what's going on? Like, why is this whole meal planning again so hard for people?
Because it's easier to go through a drive-through.
Yeah.
Because it's easier to go through a drive-through. And because our brain, again, is working against us there. The combinations of fat, starch, oil, salt that is in fast food sets our brain off like a pinball machine. And it just, our brain's like, whoa, ding, 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 give me more of that, right?
Mm-hmm.
The hard thing is our brain is doing that, but then our cells are also doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And so we eat this food and our body's like freaking out because it doesn't know what to do with it. Because it's like being sent in the wrong code. You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're like wrote this code and it's all beautifully coded, but it's not compatible with the system you're putting it into. We have a certain language that our body speaks when it comes to food and nutrition and nutrients, and fast food and processed food is a completely different language. And so when it comes in, it overwhelms the cells and we store it. We don't get the nutrients where they need to be. We store the excess. You know, you guys know the end of the story there. But our brain is the boss, and our brain is saying, hey, if we go over there, we get this massive surge of dopamine. We feel awesome. We feel satiated. We feel amazing. And we should do that again.
Yes.
So,
right. Yeah.
And I mean, it's the same thing as like the exercise equipment. Like everybody during COVID, it was kind of interesting to me to see how all of a sudden you couldn't buy a dumbbell anywhere, you know, yet my entire career of coaching people, they've always had treadmills in the background with laundry hanging on it.
Yeah.
You know? Like so many people have their own exercise equipment. They buy the treadmill, they buy the Nordic track, they buy the whatever thing is on sale this year. And then it gets used a couple times, and then it starts to be a storage unit for laundry or whatever else.
Yeah.
Same with the cookbooks, you know, you buy them because you're excited about them, but then they go on the shelf and it appears to our brain that it's more effort to grab the cookbook, open the cookbook, buy the food, cook the food than it is to go through the drive-through.
Yeah, that totally makes sense for sure. Completely makes sense. And then like, okay, I think about the whole, we're done with work and I know those boundaries are blurred, like we just talked about, right? But at some point we're kind of done with work, right? And there's this moment of, I need to eat and I got to feed my people.
Right.
And then it's like that little emoji where its eyes are like going in circles, you know what I mean? It's like, blah! It's like, how even, and then it's like, I got this window of time to get this done, right? Before everybody's hangry and all sorts of ticked off and, you know, all the other stuff too.
Yes.
Right. And so
has activities and
right.
curricular stuff. And
right.
It's exponentially more complicated when you bring kids into the picture.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a challenge. I mean, and I did it last night, totally unintentionally. The night absolutely got away from me. And I looked at the clock and it was 7:00 and I hadn't even started dinner and the pork chops were frozen. It's like, oh, you know, it happens, but for the most part, I have dinner planned out well in advance so I don't get in that position. And that's really when I work with people to help them create their lifestyle strategy, it's what is it for you that's going to make you successful? Maybe it's not cooking. Maybe cooking is not in the picture for you. So what's a healthy alternative to cooking that isn't a drive-through? You know, or there's all kinds of options. Or maybe, you know, you have you have to have a huge variety. I've worked with people where they're like, my family will not eat the same thing in a week. We don't do leftovers. I'm like, okay, well, more work for you, but we can make it happen, right?
Right. Yeah.
Creating the strategy. It's figuring out what will work for you, what will serve you, and what you will do.
What with the do it, Heather? Come on.
What you will actually do.
Yeah. Okay. And that makes a lot of sense for sure. And I think about the seasonalities of things for people too, right?
Sure.
There's the seasons just in your own life, like I remember years ago when I was going through chemo and stuff for cancer.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking about like healthy. I'm like, what can I eat and keep down, that doesn't like make me so nauseous. Right. Sure. And so there was like my 9-10 months, of that. But then when I was done, I'm like, I got to a point, I'm like, oh, I can eat a green salad again without gagging. All right, let's do this again, And so
there's always going to be something, right?
Yeah, right.
There's always going to be a holiday or a vacation or, your kids go through phases. My kids go through these crazy phases where they'll eat something like every meal of the day and I can't keep it in the house. And then like a switch, they're like, oh, I don't want that anymore. I'm like, and I've got, this excessive store of yogurt or whatever it was that was their thing that week. We go through seasons, but we have to remember that food is not entertainment, right? It is nourishment. It is fuel. So sometimes we have to be the big kids and we have to put our big kid pants on and eat the things that don't excite us very much, like broccoli, like, sweet potatoes, whatever. We've been programmed as a society that eating should be fun and exciting. And yes, it can be, but it also, at the end of the day, it's to fuel you for the lifestyle that you want to live. So like my husband, bless him, I was out of town and he bought chocolate Lucky Charms. I didn't even know that was a thing. And he was so excited about it. I'm like, why? Why did you buy this crap? It's garbage. He's like, because it's good. I'm like, oh. But we had a conversation with our kids about, hey, this isn't breakfast. This is like a treat. If you want to have a treat, have a bowl of this. And understanding that what the food does for you, your fruity pebble, cocoa puff, whatever's, as a treat, not as breakfast.
Yeah. Right. Oh my gosh.
Have your actual food.
Right. Exactly. Scrambled eggs. Good.
Exactly. Fruity, pebble, crunch, whatever. Not good.
Yes, that's great.
But we've been programmed that that's what we should have for breakfast, right?
Right.
It should be fun. Kicks are for kids.
Yeah. Right.
Or tricks are for kids or whatever. How much cereal I eat because I don't even know the names. But we've been programmed that, it's supposed to be fun. And I left out this part of my background. I managed restaurants for 10 years and the biggest foodie there ever was. I love a great meal at a fine dining restaurant, but again, that's quality, awesome food with amazing service, fancy presentations, all kinds of cool things, that the chefs are capable of doing that I can't do at home, but it's not entertainment for my mouth. Like it's not, I don't know how I'd explain this better, but it's not Fruity Pebbles. Yeah. It's not the pinball machine going off in my head.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And it's, I actually really appreciate that you're mentioning that food is not entertainment, because again, I think about all of these busy leaders, executives, right? Where it's like they're, picking up the kids and they're going through the drive-through and they're throwing the stuff, the back, it's like, here you go, everybody. And they're throwing, whatever kids meal in the back of the car. And, as they're driving to soccer or, whatever else it is. And it's like, my 7-year-old, she knows that there's like some kind of a kid's meal, something or another. She knows it's coming with a toy. Like, not, so it doesn't even matter really, even like how crappy, whatever chicken nugget, whatever thing is, it's like, she's already past that anyhow, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm just trying to get some calories in you,
right? Marketing at its finest. Well, the other thing you have to think about is when you are, a business leader, you're out there, you're constantly whining and dining or being wined and dined. So going out and eating at restaurants multiple meals a day, you're going to be consuming likely way more calories than you would. And, more unhealthy oils, more, starches, processed starches. So there are ways to do it healthfully without being that weirdo that brings their own lunch. Like the executives I have worked with, I had a physician, she's always going out with, drug reps. I had an attorney who's always going out with her clients and other attorneys and whatever. And so we talked about, how to do it healthfully. And luckily, thankfully, restaurants have realized that people want healthier options.
Yeah.
And so, going to the nicer restaurant that has a healthier option versus like the Chili's or the Applebee's that has zero options that are worth consuming. Don't sue me, anyone in those worlds. It's just my opinion. But, there are ways to be busy, to eat out, to go, to vacation, and not completely blow it out of the water.
Yeah, like I totally see that. Our family was just recently on a trip. San Diego was wonderful. We had a great time. And there's this Mexican restaurant that my husband's parents have been going to like since the 60s or something. Like that's where his family grew up. And so I'm like, okay, good. And they had nothing healthy on the menu, nothing. There wasn't even, I was like, you don't even have like a salad? Just like, okay. And so I just told my husband, I said, just get the things you're going to get. And then I just took a few things off of his plate. And I had a very, very small portion. I wanted to taste it because I'm like, okay, this is like a dish, that your family has grown up on, but I didn't feel obligated to get the platter with all the things, on it. And so, and in the end, actually felt fine. I was like, okay, like,
well, that's the other thing is, that whole Pareto principle, if you are, for the most part, doing what your body needs, you're exercising, you're eating well, you're getting good sleep, you're giving your brain a break. Then when you go on vacation and you're at Disneyland with all the stimulation and all the sugar and all the things, it's not the end of the world, right? It's when we do that day after day after day after day, and we're not exercising, and then we're getting 4 hours of sleep a night, and we're falling asleep with the TV on, and blue light blinking in our face all night long. It's the cumulative effect. And really, that's what happens as we get in our 40s, 50s, and beyond. It's not that all of a sudden our metabolism just died. It's not that all of a sudden the bottom fell out of our hormones. It's the cumulative effect of everything we've done throughout our lives. The chemical exposure, the junk food we've consumed, the sunlight we've exposed ourselves to, which PS, I'm a fan of sunlight, but not with the baby oil like we did when we were teenagers. But the lack of sleep for year after year after year, the living on caffeine and alcohol for year after year after year. It's the cumulative effect. And so when you get to be in your mid 40s, mid 50s, it's not like there's a bell that rings that says, okay, now your body breaks. It depends on what you've done up until that point.
I can see that. Yeah. It completely makes sense for sure. So, because I've definitely seen people who are in their 60s that they could outrun a 20-year-old, they've done a good job of taking care of themselves, and do they have that piece of cheesecake at their birthday? They do,
Absolutely.
right. But it's
every single night.
Right. For sure. Well, and then the other thing too, and I think from like a leader's perspective, a lot of them are in this sense of, I need to entertain my people to keep them engaged, right? To motivate them and whatnot. And I've seen a lot of leaders and also HR people, whatnot, say, okay, we're going to do a company thing. We're going to feed them. Right. Sugar. And so,
sugar.
Yeah, we're going to feed them sugar. Right. So what do? They call in the 5 dozen of bagels, to be delivered for, whatever it is, or the, and it's, there's nothing wrong with food, right? Like, it's like, we're not demonizing food here. It's the choices perhaps, behind that. Right. And I was just thinking about how years ago, I was bringing in some treats. This was at a client site, bunch of software technology folks and whatnot. And I brought in this gorgeous platter. I mean, it was like bigger than the size of a steering wheel, right? This platter of pineapple spears and strawberries and, just like all these like yummy, whatever. And they looked at me like I had lost it. They're like, why are you
Where are
bringing
the donuts?
Yeah, exactly. And there was one guy on the team who was like, "Oh, thank you so much," and he just was like, "I love this. This is so, so great." And anyhow, but he was also the guy who always brought his home lunch, right? Like,
Right.
like he was that kind of guy. Like, he anyhow. But yeah, so it's just so interesting.
It's interesting because now if you are a leader of millennials, you're probably figuring out that they are motivated very differently than the previous generation. And they are motivated by experiences. They are motivated by time off. They don't care if you give them a raise, they want an extra day off, right?
Right.
So if you take that into perspective, one of the things that I love doing is contributing to corporate wellness programs. That is an added value that you can give to your team that they go, oh, you value me. My health matters to you, and especially if you deliver it the right way. Now, if you go in and say, I don't want you taking any 6 days, so I'm going to do this for you, that's probably not going to be as received as well. But adding value to your compensation package, adding value to your, bonuses of, hey, this quarter, if we meet our goals, we're going to go rock climbing or we're going to go do whatever. It's becoming a lot more well received than that party with the junk food. I mean, I always think of, when I think of an office party, I always think of Office Space and eating the cake, right? I'm like, who wants to do that? Nobody wants to go to the office birthday party with, the cake and your boss that you can't stand. But if you could go rock climbing, or you could go bowling, or you could go do something fun as a team, one, you're building the team. Two, you're probably going to spend less. And three, they are going to remember it. They're going to remember that experience way more than they're going to remember, the pizza that you bought them last Friday.
Right.
And they're going to go, my boss cares about me because he or she takes us this place or invites our family to come with us.
Yeah. Right.
So those corporate wellness programs, they can run the gamut from, they used to be just a gym membership. Now it can be, monthly classes. It can be family stuff together. It can be meal planning. It can be all these things that you can offer your team to say, I value you. And the ROI is insane for what the investment is.
So good. So good. And I love that because the multi-generations in the workplaces now, right? So we're getting to have 3-4 generations. The other day I was reading about how people used to work 40 years. Now we're working 60 years. And that's because there's, we're taking chunks off, right? So it was very known for a very long time, right? You have a woman with children, she'll often stay home for the first few years, right? Until the kids go back to school and then she's working, right? So like that was kind of norm. But now it's like, nah, I'm in my 40s. My kids are still in high school, but I want to travel more. We're going to take a year off as a family. We're going to travel. Like before it was like, no, you don't do that now. And then people are living longer, right? So it's possible for them to work 60 years, right? I mean, it's kind of nuts to think about this, but it also makes sense. And so with these multiple generations in the workplace, then it's, what are we doing to listen to them, right? What are their individual needs, and having that ability to be flexible with them and not have it cookie cutter, these situations. And I think it's truly the turn toward being more kind to what people want, right?
I think about the company my husband works for. They offer a 401k and all that stuff. And very few of the employees take them up on it because they are single, 30-year-old guys, and they should be thinking about retirement, but let's be honest, they are not. So that package that you're offering is just kind of going in the garbage, and they're not feeling like they're getting benefits, so to speak.
Right.
But if you offered something else of value, now now you're appeasing both, because maybe the people that are super excited about the 401k don't really want to go bowling. Right? So, I mean, it washes out.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I love that for sure. And I love all of this because Heather, this is really, I mean, this is what having that healthy lifestyle, healthy workplace,
Mhm.
it's so important.
Well, that is the reason I pivoted in 2022 to the beginning of 2022 to working only with women.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason was because when women are in leadership positions, now I'm not saying men don't do this, but specifically with women, when they're in a leadership position, people follow. There's a ripple effect.
Yeah.
And if the CEO is prioritizing her health and wellness, prioritizing her self-care, then everyone around her is going to feel empowered to also do that.
Yeah. I love it.
Right? It sets the
Mm-hmm.
culture, it sets
Mm-hmm.
the tone. Whereas if you have the old school 80s Wall Street boss where you're supposed to, live at your desk and, be attached to the phone literally because it didn't come off the desk, 80 hours a week, that's not a culture of health and wellness. But
Mm-hmm.
I've found that the more women I work with who are in those leadership positions, their families get healthier, their friends get healthier, their whole office gets healthier. It's really cool to watch.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's
Really
wonderful. And we just need to get the guys to do it as well, right? So it's them with their, often female
right, right.
significant other, right? Oh,
Yes,
so
yes.
good. I love that. Coming back to this whole idea of like kindness, I'm really big on compassion, right? Like this is something, that's very, very important. And I'm seeing more and more leaders wanting to be compassionate, right? So I just wanted to touch on this for a moment. In your perspective, what does compassion look like in the workplace, if you were to define that?
Allowing people to be human,
Okay.
seeing them as the human being working with you or for you, not the minion or the cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
Understanding that we are human. We have seasons, like you said. We have outside lives that we try to leave at the door, but we can't. If our mom is sick in the hospital, I mean, I can't tell you how many people I know right now that are taking care of elderly parents or aunts or
Yes.
uncles.
Oh.
So you've got that weighing on you. And then you probably have kids you're raising that are probably, in school and sports and all the things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you've got a spouse that maybe they're struggling at their job. And so you're like, oh, I better hang on here because I may be the sole breadwinner, or I am the sole breadwinner, something like that. So understanding as a leader that you are managing people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say, when I was a manager, I did not subscribe to this. I was young and bullheaded and full of fire and did not make for a great manager. I was thinking the other day, if I could go back and teach myself what I know now, holy cow, I would have been a completely different manager. But, lived experience is the best
Right.
teacher, right?
Right.
And that is what I see. I mean, my husband, he is a general manager of a car dealership, and I watch how he leads and has led his team for almost 20 years. And it is with his heart. He leads with his heart. He listens. He'll walk by, and if you at your desk like this, he's like, "You okay? Everything good?" And it's not that cursory, "Hey, how you doing?" and keep walking. It's,
Mm-hmm.
"Are you okay?"
Yeah.
And if they say, "Yeah," he's like, "No, you're not. Come here, let's go talk."
Mm-hmm.
You know. And I think as a leader, if you offer people the opportunity to open up to you and to be human, they will serve you so much better.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So good. Yes. Compassion is a big deal, right? And
Yes.
it's connecting that person to person. I love that. So,
And compassion with yourself. I forgot to say that part.
yes. Oh my
You
gosh,
are
right?
human as well. You are
Mhm.
human as well. You
Yeah.
are not a machine.
We're
You are not.
not?
No, I like to think that I am not mortal, but apparently I am.
Mhm.
Whenever I put my cape on and I try to be Wonder Woman, it always gets tangled somewhere.
Yeah,
So,
right.
you know,
I love it. So, as we're wrapping up this conversation today, Heather, what's one last bit of advice that you'd like to leave with our listeners?
take care of yourself first, always, every single day. Non-negotiable.
Okay.
Non-negotiable.
I love that.
I don't care if the house is on fire. Run outside and meditate under a tree. No, but I'm serious. I read a quote once that said, you will always have time to do something for someone else. And if you think about it, your kids come running up, Mom, I have a book report that's due tomorrow. Okay, let's get it done. Your spouse says, oh, I'm not feeling well. I can't do this. I can't do that. Yep, no problem. I got it. Mom calls, I'm sick. I need to ride to the hospital. No problem. Right. But when you need it, you push it down and go, no, I'll deal with that later.
Yeah.
And then you can't be that to everyone else. So taking care of yourself, whether it's 5 minutes, I prefer longer, but if it's only 5 minutes, great. Make that 5 minutes count every single day to make sure that you have done what you need to be a whole healthy person so that you can be and do for everybody else.
Yeah. And it's perfect. It's wonderful. What is the one place that people can find you?
The one place, I am on LinkedIn. That is my favorite place to be these days. I'm on there posting all kinds of things. So.
All right. Just search for Heather Dumas on LinkedIn.
Heather Dumas.
Okay. All right. Fabulous. Heather, thanks again for joining us on this episode of Today's Top Leaders.